Good afternoon and welcome to Football League World TV. My name is Ned Holmes. I'm joined by Football League World Assistant Editor George Dagless. And we're going to bring you all the latest news and rumours from the EFL on transfer deadline day. We can't give you Messi to PSG. We can't give you Ronaldo to Man United. But I can promise you that the next 11 hours or so in the EFL are going to be hectic. So buckle up. How are you this morning, George?
Yeah, I'm good, Ned. It's been an interesting morning so far. Plenty of fascinating stories, I think you could say. Some particularly surprising, but we'll get to them in a bit. But yeah, happy deadline day to you.
Brilliant. Happy deadline day to you as well, mate. We'll crack on in just a second. But before we do, we just wanted to say don't forget to like and subscribe to the Football League World TV channel on YouTube. Give us a follow and retweet this on Twitter and like and share this on Facebook. So we're going to crack on with some of the biggest done deals from the last 24 hours in the EFL. We're going to start with Troy Deeney joining Birmingham City on a 2-year deal. West Brom had also been linked, but the former Watford strikers left the Hornets after 11 years and returned to his boyhood club, really, in Birmingham City. George, this a good signing for the Blues, and do you see Deeney being a sort of a regular starter straight away?
Yeah, I think it's a really good signing. I think obviously he'll need to prove himself, like any other player that arrives at a new club to earn that starting spot. But there's no reason why it wouldn't be too long before he does get involved in that Birmingham team. I think it's a really smart signing. I think it's sort of the perfect way for Birmingham to round off what's been a very productive summer window under Lee Bowyer. Obviously, you look at their attacking options now. Chuks and Ike's obviously come in, and the pair of them joined Scott Hogan and Lukas Jukovic in the Birmingham squad. So there's 4 very good attacking players there. When you look at some of the players in behind, obviously Tahith Chong has got plenty of headlines already this season since his arrival on loan from Man United. It's a very, very handy team there that's got lots of good experience. It looks like they're a lot happier than they were under Aitor Karanka as well. And I think someone like Deeney, he obviously brings that sort of promotion winning experience from the multiple times he's done it with Watford. So I think it's a very good signing for Birmingham. I'm sure that sort of supporters are going to be very, very pleased with it and excited to see him in a blue shirt. Obviously, a fan of the club as well. Always bodes well bringing in such a player with the performances he can hopefully bring.
And a boost for them as well, given the links to West Brom and stuff like that. You touched on it there about the spirit of the squad. Do you think Lee Bowyer is the sort of manager that could sort of help Deeney get back to his best in the Championship?
Yeah, I think so. I think Lee Bowyer always sort of backs himself to bring in players like this that perhaps have got into a little bit of a rut or perhaps lost their way a little bit. He potentially levelled out at Deeney perhaps at times towards the end of his Watford career. But Bowyer always backs himself to bring in such players and get a tune out of them. He's done it before. He's obviously shown that he could do it at Birmingham last season with the way they picked up when he arrived. And he did it at Charlton as well when at times their backs were against the wall, but he still got performances out of them. So I think he'll be confident that bringing Deeney in is going to be a really sort of positive move going into the season after the end of this window.
Brilliant. And obviously it's a boost for them that Deeney's going to have that sort of international break to sort of bed down with his teammates. Well, moving across to another move between the Premier League and the Championship. But this time we're at Bramall Lane, and Sheffield United have signed Conor Hourihane from Aston Villa on loan for the rest of the season. You see this as a good signing for Slavisa Jokanovic, George, and can you see him emulating that sort of early season success with the Blades?
There's no reason why this signing shouldn't really work out. He's a quality player, Hourihane. We know what he can do in the Championship. Obviously, did well on loan at Swansea last season. So, he's a player that's got great quality. You look at the way Jokanovic likes to play, and obviously the style he's trying to implement at Sheffield United, obviously very possession based. Hourihane is the sort of player that can naturally adapt to that. Swansea have that style as well. And that's why he went in there and fitted in seamlessly. And, really he's a player that you could potentially at the right Premier League club see still doing a job in the top flight. So for Championship level, he's definitely one of the better midfielders you're going to see in the second tier. And obviously it's still a sign that Sheffield United, despite their start this season, obviously a very big pull. You'd imagine eventually he's got a click for them, and they've got the quality in that, not just in the first 11, but in the squad to really challenge up at the right end. And someone like Hourihane potentially can come in there and obviously with that championship experience he got last season, just help them adapt a little bit more, just because they have been away, I guess, for a couple of seasons in the second from the second tier, and perhaps Hourihane could just help them, get up to speed quicker than they have so far. But there's no reason why it shouldn't be a really top signing. We know he's a quality player. He ticks all the boxes really for Sheffield United.
Sure, and I mean, obviously in previous seasons we have seen Slavisa Jokanovic take a little while to I guess get his ideas across to his players. But do you think after what has been a really troubled and difficult start for Sheffield United, do you think landing a quality player like Hourihane and potentially a few more before the window closes is just sort of boost they need?
Yeah, it should just sort of I guess boost is the right word for the whole squad. Seeing a player like Hourihane coming in, it's just a reminder that we're playing for Sheffield United here, and we should be challenging up at the sharp end. The fact that we're attracting these sort of players, that they know that the start's not been good enough, but ultimately I think there was always going to be a little bit of adaptation period with someone like Jokanovic coming in looking to shake it up a little bit. But it's a massive boost. He's such a top draw player, particularly at championship level. And like you say, Ned, if Sheffield United can manage to bring one or two more players in of Hourihane's calibre before the end of the window tonight, then despite what's gone on so far this season, I think after the international break, that they'll be really starting to gel and starting to click, and there's plenty of time for them to turn it around. I think Hourihane would probably be quite pivotal to that, to be honest.
Brilliant. Moving on to our next done deal. And it's two done deals actually that we're talking about here, and it's Reading signing Scott Dann on a free transfer and Danny Drinkwater on loan. These are big names, George. Positive moves for you, or a slight sign of desperation for the Royals?
I think the Scott Dann one in particular is definitely worth a go. I've always quite liked Scott Dann. Coming through the ranks, obviously got himself into the Premier League. Very solid player at that level. I still think he's got plenty to offer. Obviously the likes of Birmingham were looking at him as well, trying to bring him back. So I think that speaks volumes that there was interest in him, not just from Reading. I think he's still got lots to offer, even if he is coming towards the end of his career. So I think that's a pretty smart move for Reading. Danny Drinkwater's an interesting one. We know the quality he's got. We know the pedigree he's got. Obviously won the Premier League with Leicester. Got himself a big move to Chelsea, but as we well know, it's not quite worked out for him at Stamford Bridge. And in the time since, sort of a few moves away, loan to Burnley, didn't prove the most productive period of his career. But if Paunovic feels that he can get a little bit of form out of him, get him sort of, I guess, feeling just enjoying himself again, enjoying his football, I think it is potentially a really good signing. You would say Drinkwater is still very much a Premier League player. He's just got to find that little bit of rhythm and form again. So that's the task of Paunovic. I guess you could say Drinkwater's a little bit more of a risk than Dann. I think you know what you're going to get with Scott Dann. But for where Reading are, and potentially with the window they've had so far, I definitely think it's a move that's just created a little bit more excitement around the Royals. And I think for a start, that's a good thing. And Drinkwater could potentially be a real hit there. We'll just have to see what happens with him in the coming weeks and months.
Sure, and I mean, you just got to look at players that have also come in like Baba Rahman from Chelsea. You'd have to say if Paunovic can get those sort of players back to their best, or at 3/4 of their best, Reading should have some real players on their hands. They obviously seem to be backing the manager late in the window. Do you think this is a hint that we should expect him to have a fair bit more time, despite the poor results recently?
Well, yeah, you'd expect so. I guess that's the logical full process. Obviously, sometimes it never really works out like that. But I guess the only sort of flip side you say is Paunovic can't really now say he's not been backed in the summer window, because obviously they've managed to bring in some signs towards the end of this market. And if the results don't turn, then obviously there will be questions sort of asked of him now that they have brought in a few additions. But yeah, I think it's at least a little bit of a positive sign that Reading aren't sort of ready to pull the trigger just yet. But after the international break, he's obviously got a little bit of time to bed in these new faces and start getting things going in the right direction and try and get them back to a level of where they were last season. And if he doesn't do that in the next few weeks after the international break, it won't be long before people start sort of jumping on his back again. So we'll have to see. He does need to get results pretty quickly, I'd say, despite these new arrivals coming in.
Absolutely. And we'll shift now to our final done deal. It's a move that you thought you might see happen at the start of the summer, and it's come at the end, and that's Blackpool signing Jordan Gabriel from Nottingham Forest. The fee said to be around £700,000. Sunderland, of course, are previously linked, but he's back at Blackpool, somewhere that he had some success at last season. Does this signing just make sense to you, George?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Forest were willing to let him go. So it makes sense for him to go to a club where, like you're saying, they did really well last season. Obviously knows Neil Critchley very well, knows how Blackpool want to play, how they want to set up. And you'd imagine Gabriel's going to go in there and obviously play a lot of football this season for the Tangerines. So I'm perhaps a little bit surprised that Forest were sort of willing to let him go as easily as they have been. But, that's obviously their decision. That's just my personal opinion, really. But I think it's, that said, it's therefore a really good signing for Blackpool. And I think he'll be eager to show that he is a championship level player now. I think there's probably, a fair case to argue that anyway from his performances last season in League One. But now he obviously has the chance to really show it regularly in the second tier. So I think it's a good move for him. It's a really good move for Blackpool as well, who obviously, had a little bit of a tough start to the season. Back in the Championship was perhaps to be expected. Been a few seasons since they've been at this level. But yeah, I think for all involved, it's a pretty decent move, to be honest.
Brilliant. And do you think now we've seen Gabriel go that we can expect to see a bit more movement coming in from Forest's perspective before tonight's deadline?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Forest fans will hope so. It's not been the most productive start to the season for them in the Championship, so I think there's always going to be a little bit of hope that if some players are leaving, more are coming in. But we'll have to see with that one. I'm sure Chris Hughton is still looking to try and add to the squad where he can before the deadline. So yeah, I think that's just a time will tell really with that one, but you'd certainly not rule it out at this current stage.
Brilliant. And we'll move now to turn our focus some of the biggest transfer rumours this morning. This is one that's sort of emerged quite recently, as per Tom Barkley from The Sun. Anguissa is in Italy, tying up his loan move to Napoli in Serie A, and that could turn into a €17.3 million move in the future. George, is this a blow for Fulham, or is it a case of getting rid of a player that seemed to want to be elsewhere and an expected exit?
Well, it is a blow because he's a quality footballer, but I think Fulham have got more than enough to deal with it, to be honest. He's not played too much so far this season, sort of been in and out of the team. When he has played, he's obviously looked very much at home in the Championship. That's to be expected because he looked a Premier League level player really last season for the Whites. I think Marco Silva's probably known that this was always going to happen, or there was always the potential for this to happen in this market, and that's why we've seen the other options he's got playing, and there's still players to come back. Obviously, Harrison Reed has only just come back. Tom Kearney's still come back. But Jean-Michel Seri's started and doing really well. He looks like he potentially is going to stick around. And then you've got the youngsters like Fabio Carvalho coming through. So I think Fulham are going to deal with it just fine. They look perfectly capable of still putting together a promotion challenge at the weekend when they beat Stoke. And yeah, in terms of his move to Napoli, obviously it's a loan with a potential view to a permanent deal. I think it's a pretty decent price that Fulham are probably going to get for him. And we'll just have to see how he does in Serie A. You would expect him to do pretty well there, given that he's gone to a place like Villarreal in the past and done well. So there's no reason why this shouldn't work out for him.
Sure, and you've obviously seen Fulham a few times this season in person, George, covering them for Football League World. You touched on it then. They've got a lot of options in midfield. Do you think it's a case of just letting Anguissa leave, or do you expect Marco Silva to be looking to sign a replacement in the dying hours of the window?
Yeah, I mean, we know Matt Grimes is one of interest. Fulham have obviously tried to bring him in. So far, they've been unsuccessful. Time will tell if they make another late bid for the Swansea player. But, for me, as good a player Grimes is, and I'm sure he would obviously add to the Fulham squad, I still look at really that Fulham team at the moment. And even if Anguissa leaves and no one else comes in, it's a really, really strong side. a really strong, not just first 11, really strong squad. So I don't think Fulham fans will be losing too much sleep if no one else really does arrive between now and the end of the transfer window this evening.
Brilliant. And we'll now shift our focus to a Football League World exclusive. Daniel Jefferson has been a player that's been talked about an awful lot in the summer window, whether that was links with a loan move to the EFL or some big Premier League clubs like Everton and Leeds showing an interest and an apparent £5 million offer being rejected. George, Football League World revealed exclusively this morning that Jefferson's set to now join at Burton Albion on loan for this season. You wrote this piece, George. Do you want to tell us a bit more about the situation?
Yeah, so, as you touched on there, Ned, Jefferson has obviously been linked with a whole host of clubs this summer. Obviously emerged on the scene for Sheffield United towards the end of last year, got a goal against Everton in the Premier League, really sort of grabbed a few headlines there. And naturally, when a young player does that, they're going to attract interest. So obviously some Premier League sides were interested in him, EFL clubs as well. Sheffield United didn't want to sell him this summer, which is fair enough. You can understand why, with the potential that he does have and with the talent that he could become in the coming season. So obviously that sort of ruled out potentially a Premier League club swooping in for him. So he's going on loan to Burton Albion. There was a chance he was going to go to Belgian side Beerschot. Hopefully I've said that right. But he didn't want to do that. Jefferson expressed his interest in, or his preference to go to Burton Albion in League One. And I think, from my point of view, I think that's a really good decision from him, a really good move for him. Obviously, Burton have started pretty well this year in League One. I think under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, they're hoping to build on the momentum they built towards the end of last season in the third tier. So they're potentially going to be, there or thereabouts, hopefully from their perspective in the playoff race. And I think Jefferson, in going there, he's got a real opportunity of playing regular senior football at a good level, challenging, hopefully, they'll hope, obviously, at the right end of the table. And Sheffield United obviously get to keep him on their books and see how he does at a decent level of football. So I think it's a good move for all involved. And, Jefferson, he wants that move. He wants to move to Burton Albion. He's more than happy to do so. So I think, that's a really positive sign as well. There's no reason why he shouldn't go there and hit the ground running and do well under Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank.
Absolutely. It sounds like the Brewers are going to get a sort of a young and hungry striker that's really looking to prove himself. I think as much quality as there is in forward areas in that Blades squad at the moment, you'd struggle to say any of the strikers have really started the season particularly well. So there's definitely an opportunity for in my eyes anyway, for Jefferson to go away. If he scores hatfuls of goals, then Jokanovic has got to be thinking come January, maybe he's the option there. So there's always that on the table. And we'll move to another bit of EFL transfer news then. And this one's all about Jamal Lowe. The Swansea forward was linked with a move to Blackburn earlier this morning, but according to Mark McCann from Sky Sports, he's now having a medical at Bournemouth ahead of a £1.5 million move to the Cherries. This is a good signing for you, George?
Yeah. I think it's a good signing. I'm a little bit surprised, to be honest, that Swansea are letting him go, but ever since Russell Martin really come in there, it's kind of looked like it was possible that he was going to be moving on, and so it's proven. I think the price is pretty good as well. I think Bournemouth will be very pleased with how much they're paying for him. And I think you look at him going into that Bournemouth team that's already stocked full of real top quality attacking players. He could potentially have a bit of a field day there. I guess the only question mark you might have is just how Scott Parker going to sort of fit them all in and make sure it works and make sure it all gels together. But Lowe's a player I really like. It's obviously someone that's risen through the ranks, come from non-league, got himself moved to Portsmouth, did really well there, got his chance in the Championship. He's done well at Swansea, I would say, despite sort of Russell Martin being fairly willing to let him go. I think this is perhaps just another step in his career path. I guess you would say Bournemouth have got a better chance of challenging for promotion this season than Swansea. And he'll want to take that and show that he's a player that's capable of not just winning promotion from the Championship now, but could potentially get himself into the Premier League. So I think it's a really good move for Bournemouth for Lowe. I guess I'm just perhaps a little bit surprised that Swansea are letting him go, but that's Russell Martin's decision, and that's fair enough.
Sure, yeah, and as you say, Parker's going to have a real embarrassment if Richards. If you think, Morgan Rogers during this season, Anthony started sort of really fast, and then he's got, the likes of Solanke and others. From a Swansea perspective, they saw Ayew leave in the summer, that their top scorer for the last few years, star striker. Now they're seeing Lowe leave. There's got to be I know the old Perot started the season well, but there's got to be a few concerned Swans fans at the moment. Do you think it's just a case of having some faith in Russell Martin and letting him make all the big decisions? Because, I guess this is his project. Yeah,
I think you're right there, Ned. If I was a Swansea fan, I'd naturally would want to see a player like Jamal Lowe stick around. But if, Russell Martin doesn't feel that he's quite right for the approach he wants to take, then you sort of have to, respect that and let Martin sort of get to work. Obviously, he sort of come in midway through pre-season, really. So he's had a bit of time to decide what he wants to do with Swansea, but not lots of time. So I think it's obviously going to take longer than this last part of the window for Martin to really get his ideas across and get his personnel that he wants in place. So, how much of an impact that will have, at least until January, we'll wait and see. As you say, Perot's had a really good start for Swansea, so hopefully he can get them some goals. We'll just have to see what happens there. But, I think Swansea fans will have to be, a little bit patient with Russell Martin at the moment and just see how he goes about putting together a slightly different looking team to the one we obviously saw last season that did really well under Steve Cooper.
Sure, and we'll move over now to another Bournemouth transfer update. As per Sky Sports, Bournemouth are now likely to sign Celtic midfielder Ryan Christie. Do you see this as a signing that Scott Parker needed to make, George?
I know he's obviously a slightly different player to Jamal Lowe, but I think the argument sort of carries over. That he's a good player. I think it's probably a good signing for Bournemouth, but it's just finding out how it's all going to click, where he's going to come into the team, who he's going to come into the team at the expense of, and just simply how it's all going to work. I think Bournemouth had a good squad anyway, really, before these sort of two late signings. So, we'll have to see. I really like Ryan Christie as a player. I'm excited to see what he's going to do in England. I thought potentially at times during his time at Celtic, when they were, obviously cleaning up north of the border, he could have potentially got a Premier League move. That's obviously not come to pass, but he'll feel going into Bournemouth, he can get himself into the top flight sooner rather than later, either via a promotion-winning campaign with the Cherries or via doing well and potentially then getting a move into the top flight. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does. And again, it's just going to be interesting to see how Parker sort of gets them all into the same team. But, it is a squad game, I suppose. And over the sort of 40-odd games we've got left, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for all the different names that are in that team to get their chance to shine, I would say.
Absolutely. And you do feel perhaps that these two late signings are sort of maybe quite reactionary from the Cherries in the sense that they've seen Fulham and West Brom make these, blistering starts to the season, and they've just thought, well, we better add a few more tools to Scott Parker's armoury, if you will. And we're going to move now to our next transfer update. And this one comes from the Athletic's Phil Hay. He's reporting that Robbie Gotts will leave Leeds United today. Oldham and Barrow in League Two, both keen, as well as Motherwell north of the border. George, you think this is a great signing at that level, isn't it? A player that he's featured under Bielsa, that there's clearly a lot to like about him. It'd be an exciting addition for either Barrow or Oldham.
Yeah, definitely. Both those two teams in League Two. I think Oldham in particular perhaps needed a little bit of positive news. Obviously, they got their first win under their belts at the weekend, but it's been pretty difficult for them so far. But I think Gotts is the sort of player that there's no reason why both teams shouldn't be really excited about. As you say, he's obviously featured under Bielsa. He's perhaps not quite yet at the level of a Premier League footballer, but there's plenty that you see in his playing style that he looks like a Bielsa kind of player. Very busy, very energetic. So I think there's a lot to like about him. I think potentially at that level he's really going to excel, and whoever does manage to get him in is going to be, I think, really, really pleased that they've managed to do so. Perhaps surprised that even more clubs haven't been taking a look at him, but yeah, it's a really good move for whoever gets him, I would say.
Yeah, certainly looks exciting for those League Two clubs. Well, as I said earlier, we don't have Cristiano Ronaldo. We don't have Lionel Messi. No big moves like that. But perhaps one of the bigger name moves that's been talked about today. That's Andy Carroll. Pete O'Rourke's revealed that he's in talks with Reading after leaving Newcastle this year. That's likely to be something of a controversial move. You feel, George? What are your thoughts on it? Is it a bit too risky, or is he just what the Royals need at the moment? Actually.
Yeah, it's quite tough to predict that one. I don't know. I mean, we touched on the Drinkwater one earlier, and I think Andy Carroll sort of falls into that bracket pretty easily. There, he could potentially be a massive hit at Championship level. We know the sort of quality he does have, how good he is in the air, but it's whether he's going to be fit enough to sort of show that. I'm interested to see how he's going to fit in the Reading team, providing that he obviously does go there and plays regularly. You look at some of the players Reading have, likes of Mate and Lucas João, potentially working off someone like Andy Carroll. I think that's going to be quite an interesting dynamic up top. I guess on paper, that there's obviously plenty of obstacles that would need to be overcome, but I guess on paper it's something that could work out. But say it's a very big if. But I guess again, with the way Reading's window has gone really up until now, I guess if the financials work for them, which is very important for the way Reading are at the moment, if the financials work for them, it's probably worth just taking a punt and seeing what happens, because it's going to create a little bit of excitement amongst the fan base, and that's a good start. Then hopefully he can inspire them onto a little bit of a better run of form. It's a really interesting sign, and just sort of hoping it does actually go through, and excited to see how he does at the Medeski. Well, it's not the Medeski now, the Select Police Car Stadium, whatever it's called now.
Yes, it's certainly a mouthful. And just one more thing on Carroll there, George. He's obviously a player with a Premier League reputation. England caps and stuff like that. Would you expect maybe other Championship clubs might be in for him if they hear that a deal is possible? There's a lot of clubs looking for strikers at the moment. There
are a lot of clubs looking for strikers, but I'm not too sure there's going to be a massive gaggle for him. With all due respect to what he's done in his career and the talent he does have, I think a lot of clubs will think it's not really worth the risk. Sure. I think Reading are just looking at it thinking, why not? Let's just see what happens, because we've kind of got nothing else to lose, I guess, at this stage. So yeah, I'm not too surprised there's not been lots of clubs going in for him. And Reading will just hope that it ends up proving to be lucky that they were really the only team that have gone serious with their interest in him at this late stage.
Brilliant. And so for our final story of the afternoon, it looks like Sheffield United are back in the West Midlands for a bit of loan business. Morgan Gibbs-White could be joining them on a season-long loan from Wolves, as per The Athletic. No option to buy in that deal. But, given they've just landed Hourihane as well, how good a signing is this? And do you think this, really bolsters that midfield and gives Jokanovic some really options that are real top quality at Championship level?
Yeah, refer back to the sort of the top of the show where we talked about Hourihane. It's another exciting signing that they're making just before the end of the window. Gibbs-White is a very, very good player. I think there's no reason why he can't eventually sort of be more establishing himself in the Premier League. So this is obviously his chance to again show what he can do at Championship level. Sheffield United have got lots of options, but for me, I can't see why he wouldn't get regular game time there really this coming season. So I think it's another very good, exciting signing that just adds to the quality of that Sheffield United squad. It's just all about Jokanovic getting something together, getting the system in place, getting them all to gel, and just getting some results on the board now, because they've got the quality there, but they'll obviously be looking at the table thinking we're starting to lose considerable ground to the likes of Fulham at the top of the table. So yeah, after obviously this deadline and the international break, it's time for Sheffield United to get the wheels rolling.
Brilliant. And obviously, as we've proven this afternoon, George, there's a lot of big deals that could be done as the window edges closer. It's not long now. Teams have to add that final, the final piece of the jigsaw. Thanks for talking to me this lunchtime, George. If you've been watching, I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube. Like Football League World on Twitter and retweet this video, share and like on Facebook, because it will be huge in helping us grow. George, you'll be back here at 4 p.m. to discuss all the afternoon deals and joined by our colleagues George Harvey and Ben Wignalls. So you'll see him then.